My name is Jessica. I'm from the Himalayan Writing Retreat team. And today we have with us Satish Padmanabhan, Managing Editor of Outlook Magazine, Jamal Shaikh, Chief Operating Officer of Lifestyle Media Businesses at the RP-Sanjiv Goenka Group, Ria Chopra, who writes about culture, Gen Z, and the internet, Riddhi Dastitar, who writes about disability, justice, public health, gender and queerness, labor rights, and climate. Prasannata Patwa, who writes about consumer startups, streaming platforms, films, the creator economy, and the gaming ecosystem. And Urvashi Sarkar, who writes about international affairs, nuclear power, and also reports from rural India. The session will be moderated by Chetan Mahajan, who is the co-founder of the Himalayan Writing Retreat. And he also teaches an online workshop on blog and article writing, which begins next week. So, do check it out if you're interested. Yeah, over to you, Chetan.
All right, great. Thank you all for coming. And the reason for having this conversation is because we are perpetually curious about, of course, all things writing and articles in particular. And we are at this really interesting cusp. There was this whole tech thing, and there was a shift that happened because of technology, and mobiles became how you consume reportage and news information. But now we also have AI. So there is a lot of expectation, and of course, there is the doomsday scenarios, and then there are the people who say, "Oh, nothing will change." But I want to start by asking all of you folks, how different was 2024 for journalism in general? So give us insights or trends, or just what has it been like, and how do you think it's been different? And I'm not going to pick on people, but just to start with, maybe Ria, you could tell us what did you think of this year?
Sure, Chetan. I'll throw out a few broad trends that I've just observed over the last 10 to 12 months. And I'll start with something which is maybe a little, I don't want to be too doomsday about being in journalism as a whole, but I've seen a lot of my full-time journalism colleagues switch from journalism to, say, comms, marketing, and that sort of roles. So I will say that there's at least a rethinking of what working in journalism is going to be like. Like, that is what has happened. I've seen a lot of people also who want to stay in journalism and storytelling start YouTube channels and personal distribution platforms of their own. So that's one shift on a larger logistical scale that I've seen happen. I am personally not a full-time journalist. I just want to put that out. It's something I do freelance. And having seen this happen indicates a shift in the way the industry is operating, and people within the industry are feeling in some way. In terms of trends and the kinds of themes that are being written about, I will say that for the last few years when I started out, I was writing about people my age, and that's the Gen Z group, and how we look at pop culture and the internet and things like that. And there were fewer takers for stories of that kind. Like, there were only a few publications who were doing that kind of story. In the last 1 year or so, I've seen a mainstreaming of these discourses. You have traditional legacy platforms like Times of India or like a Hindustan Times also wanting to platform younger writers talking about what people their age are feeling. So I don't want to say age is not a barrier anymore, because I don't think it ever really was, but there's an acceptance that this is an important generation, an important readership now that wants what it feels to be talked about. So that's there's a, how shall we say, like, we've been brought into the mainstream in some way. Pop culture is more acceptable in the mainstream. So is internet discourse, beyond just, oh, smartphones are ruining this, generation. So that's definitely happening as well. I've seen a rise of more independent online magazines as well. The Nod is one of them. Dirty Magazine has become a little more popular this year. So there's newer avenues for people to also put their writing out, even if they don't want to go fully independent, like start something of their own, and don't want to do traditional legacy media as well. There's these options that are also experimenting with doing print once in a while. And they also talk about, because they're faster moving, because they're very well tapped into internet discourse, they're also talking about things that are relevant to us, and more internet first discourse, more celebrity interviews done in depth with the hot celebrity of the month. So yeah, I will say, like, things are both moving quicker and also moving slower or backwards in some ways. And that's just a few things I've observed.
Nice. So as a flip side to that, because that was a very, very, Gen Z internet view, Satish, what did you think was different in 2024? Because you run Outlook magazine.
Yeah, so as you know, we are a news magazine. And 2024 has been an year of elections. It's a year of major elections in so many democracies. So India included, and the US just finished. So for us, it's been a very, very politically active period. The interest towards politics has been very, very sharp, and a lot of so all our many of our issues obviously had to reflect that. Of course, we have a it's not pure politics what we do. It's sort of looking at politics from a tangential view. I mean, gender in politics, how much of the marginalized are represented, and these are areas which are of interest to us. So so in that sense, it's been a very politically active and aware, and in terms of both the readers as well as the columnists and the articles that we've been doing, the cover stories that we've been doing. And it's still not over. I mean, the US election just got over. The Maharashtra elections are just around the corner. Jharkhand is happening together alongside. And then soon after, there are a whole lot of other elections lined up. So 2024 has been for us really been a year of, getting back into politics in a big way.
Okay. All right. I can't resist this, but as a magazine editor, you have a lot of issues, man. Right.
Yeah.
Let's move to say
well,
Riddhi.
we have 52 in a
year. Yeah, 52 issues every year. Imagine that. All right, Riddhi, what do you think? What's going on in 2024?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Satish and Riya said. I think another thing, other than definitely, it's been a very politically focused year in terms of news coverage. But also, I'd add like one thing that continues to be important and will get more and more important as we move on is climate. Climate stories have been something that I've consistently been following and reading about, and I think the challenge that like now what I see is it's a lot more granular. There's climate as far as say fisheries, for instance, is concerned. I know certain journalists who write about that. Or there's if you're talking about the states like wildfires that are just raging more and more. And then if you're talking about like say the Sundarbans or something, there's floods. Like there's just so many different kinds of climate stories that are coming up. And I expect that the coverage which has gotten deeper and more widespread will continue to be so. I think the challenge. Sorry? Yeah. I think the challenge there is just mainly how to connect with the audience and not make it just this endless tale of like, whoa, which has been, which is a challenge with everything. Like if you're doing rights-based journalism, like it's depressing. So it's just more about like, okay, how do you present these stories in an interesting, compelling, like kind of actionable more way, I guess. So that is something I think that I've seen and I hope to see grow. Another thing that I've seen is like the rise of like tech and culture stories. And for me, what's very interesting is how that intersects with labor. So like gig economy stories have been really interesting to follow, a lot of unionization and the response to that. And then I'd add also queer stories. There's a lot more room for like queer issues, but I think in a country like India or in the subcontinent generally, that audience is still being cultivated. So I do a lot of disability and queer focused work, like both research and reporting. And I've seen over my own career in the last 5 years, like the room for more deeply reported, nuanced, intelligent stories that are following not just like this terrible thing happened or this bad thing happened, but like these are certain patterns or these are certain policies and how is that affecting certain populations over a large period of time. So like those sort of stories, I think I've seen they've grown, but the audience for that has to be cultivated. And I think places like Queer Beat, for instance, which is a queer it looks at everything through a queer lens, and the stories are very rigorous, and it's founded by and led by and written for a queer audience, which is very, very important. So like I think that audience is growing. And the last thing I'd say is I think in 2024 the place for art writing has really receded. I write on art shows like visual arts and things like that, and as compared to like a couple of years ago, I feel like the space for that is just really shrinking. I mean, there's some independent like Serendipity Art Foundation and things like that that are trying to cultivate their own independent art writing, but I really think like it's a lack that we have. Film Companion, for instance, shut down as well. So like that's a loss, I think.
Okay, interesting. Wow. Yeah, yeah, but I don't want to jump in just yet. So we still have Urvashi, Jamal, and um, Prasannata. So whoever would like to go next.
Can I?
Sure, please.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for your comments, and I think a lot of the ground has already been laid. So I mean, I hate to break it to everyone, but it's hard to kind of be a full-time journalist anymore. So I don't know about the rest of us who are freelancers here, but I do a bunch of things, and journalism is something which is kind of uh, maybe it's my calling, but it's not a very well-paying calling. So I teach on the side, I consult on the side, I do a lot of editing assignments, and I also sort of go onto the field when I can. But I have to say that's become increasingly less, and maybe that can come in the later part of the discussion. A few things. So I mean, I teach journalism, and so because of that, I get to meet a lot of younger people, like 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, and it's there is an interest in journalism as such. People are more kind of interested in now, advertising and marketing, and which isn't a bad thing by itself, but people are no longer interested or incentivized to ask questions anymore. The culture of asking questions, of being curious, of having an investigative mindset, that has that is really on the simmer. And in fact, one of my students, just like a very bright 21-year-old girl, told me, in my answer scripts, I will not say anything against the ruling regime. Who knows what the evaluator is thinking? So that's the level of self-censorship also that has crept in to a lot of our writing. We select our projects with care. And the second thing is that I see, a lot of gig work that's happening right now. All of us, in fact, gig workers in that sense, that I will see some editors say, oh, I have this one article which I'm commissioning. The rate is like, say, $200, and there will be like some 50 replies. So, it's like even like articles, like people have been commissioned for just one article, and there is tons of competition for it. So it's really about, how to define yourself in such a space and how to stand out and what are the challenges. I think that's what I grapple with at the moment. Yeah.
Wow. Jamal, you tell us the other side.
So, I think hats off to you, Chetan. You've got such a fantastic mix of people who, who've given us so many different points of view. 2024, very important year, like Satish said, right, in journalism, because there have been elections, Indian elections, the US elections. To me, there's been a change in journalism that's very that makes me very optimistic. The respect that we got into journalism, we got into writing because there was a respect associated with the profession. When we did 25 years ago, there was never pots of money at the end of it, but there was respect for a journalist. That transitioned over the last decade or so into us being called prostitutes and no trust in the media, and hey, they're always taking sides, etc. Right? And I think 2024 has seen traditional media show a kind of acceptance to what was called shallow digital media. There's an acknowledgement of independent journalism in the form of websites, and independent journalism in the form of non-traditionally trained people who want to report what they see and feel around them. Right. So while traditional brands like the New York Times, Times of India, Hindustan Times get all the respect, I think 2024, 2023 has started seeing the traditional shift. We often, during our younger initial days as journalists, we knew that there was a divide between the church and state, right? There was always the divide between the editorial and the business side. The business side wanted to put in paid articles, etc. Over the last few years, that divide actually diminished, in my opinion, because, I think the editorial accepted that the business guys are the kings, right? And they will always run the show. But an odd divide surfaced, which was actually between print journalists and digital journalists, right? The print journalists said that digital journalists are shallow. They don't know what they're doing. They don't really, explore a story the way it needs to be explored. And digital journalists who were churning out up to 10 stories a day, right, said that, oh, print is outdated and these guys are irrelevant and nobody reads them anymore, right? I see 2024 bridge that gap a little bit, right? I think print has accepted the fact that digital media is important. Traditional news brands have accepted the fact that if Instagram is the means of communication today, in the most popular sense of the term, they will use it to drive traffic to their websites, their stories. If today's audience values their time and attention a lot more, and they want things in 10 seconds or 15 seconds in reels, right? You see the New York Times do great reels now, or the Washington Post, right? I think that acceptance has started coming, and I think as a result of that respect to journalism or people who report the truth the way they see it is coming back. So I think it's a very positive year, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely a different tone. So Prasannata, what's your take on 2024?
I agree with some of the points that my esteemed colleagues or future colleagues or sometime working together folks have mentioned. And yes, I agree that journalism, a lot of it has gone independent. And yes, journalists have been switching to more comms and, let's say, advertising kind of jobs. But I also think that reporters, or I'm mostly a reporter, so I can only talk from my background. So for reporters, and I have worked across both print and digital, and I've seen the transition between print, kind of more focusing on now, okay, website, but also newspaper, and how do we manage everything, right? So yes, I do agree, but I think the most important thing for a reporter to sustain through any kind of changes. So these, for me, are now different mediums of communication, right? So 20 years ago when TV was starting to come, I think there was this debate again that, okay, print will go now because people will watch TV, but then it became like, okay, it's like two mediums of the way news is reaching to people. Now we have multiple ways of how news reaches to people, right? So we have Instagram, YouTube, we have our old newspapers, we have digital websites. Some old publication have gone completely digital also, right? They've shut off their print. So for me, long story short, I think it's a time when reporters who have sort of worked on some sort of a thing that, or like a niche or a subject that they are really curious about, and they have some sort of a point of view on it. I think they have really, of course, maybe it could be that they have found their kind of recognition while they were independent, but I've also seen reporters, gain that kind of recognition sort of being in full-time jobs as well. So, if you're, I'm mostly talking from the business reporting side because that is what I have done. I've been a business journalist for the last over 6 years or so. So I can only talk from that perspective. I don't know that much about the regular or the vanilla journalism publication. So if you know how to write about business, then you can sort of replicate that into multiple beats. And even if you are, let's say working independently or working with an organization. So if you so I have covered multiple beats. I was never a one beat sort of a person. So, it was like business, but from, okay, let's do startups, and okay, startups are getting boring, so let's do retail FMCG, right? So that way it became like, okay, I can write about like the financial perspective from multiple industries, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of industries are businesses, unless I'm writing about crime or something like that, which I don't cover. So if a reporter has sort of figured out some kind of a niche for themselves that is replicable to multiple sectors or multiple beats, then I think there is I don't think there there should be that kind of a difficulty for them to find their audience. Even if they are in a full-time job, they will be able to, reach good readers, build a readership. Or if they are, let's say, used to be in full-time jobs but now have gone independent, so they need to figure out their medium is what I think is more important, and what they're trying to say, because that's the only way they will be able to stand out. Because Jamal mentioned that there are reporters sort of they're not journalists per se, but these are like YouTubers who are finding facts and whatever and bringing up their own theories, and people are following them, right? So that is like your YouTubers like I think Dhruv Rathi and Mohak Mangal and these kind of folks. They are referring their sources to research papers or newspaper articles. So I think obviously there are people who are curious about things, right? That's why they have these millions of followers or whatever it is on YouTube. So as a journalist, and also to get respect, we need to be able to show that, okay, our reporting is X, Y, Z, and this is what we are doing. And that will only happen when you keep churning out stories again and again, which kind of, fortifies that image about you with people. So it's like, instead of being reliant on a brand that, okay, you work with the NYT, that is why you are a successful reporter or whatever, or you should be trusted. You need to build your own. I feel even if you're in a publication, one needs to do that in today's time. That's just a little extra legwork you have to do, because there is just so much noise, right? So how do you cut through the noise? So that's what I genuinely feel, and I think that a lot of reporters have done that in 2024, because it was a transitioning year for sure. A lot of conversation, a lot of firing has happened in a lot of newsrooms. A lot of, but hiring is also happening, but mostly on the senior roles, right? So because you want to pay them that. Freshers are not getting hired because you have to train them and you have to teach them. And for that, you don't want to put in resources, but it's very important to put in those resources. That I think our newsrooms will realize 5 years later, when they don't have any freshers who can take the spot of the other reporters. But maybe that won't happen. That's very doomsday kind of a situation. But I'm just saying that this is what I have noticed. So, sorry for taking such a long time, but yeah.
No sweat, no sweat. So that's interesting. So you're saying people need to figure out their medium, and there's a pun there, because of course some people's medium is medium. But talking about medium now, you had these brilliant, you had magazines, and then Substack came along and said, why are magazines getting in the way? The journalist can write directly for the reader. And so Substack came along. Now we have AI. And when AI walks in the door, it's like, okay, there is one school of thought which says you don't need the journalist anymore because AI will do the writing for you. And with Perplexity Pro and all of that stuff, they even will give you like the sources, and it's like verified, legit information and all of that stuff. And that's the big one. I mean, it's bizarre, because I was at a poetry workshop at the retreat like 2 days ago with Arundhati Subramaniam, and we spent like 2 hours talking about AI. I mean, hello, you're talking poetry. What does AI have to do with poetry? But even in poetry now, you can't ignore it, right? It's one of those things which you can't ignore for anything writing. So, and this is something I wanted to have specifically Jamal and Ria talk about, is what is your take on AI and what's it going to do? I mean, of course, we have the doomsday scenario, and then there's people who shrug it off. What do you think? Where do you think it'll actually take us? Crystal ball gazing.
Ria, do you want to start? Ladies first.
Oh, sure, thank you. I just noticed Jamal and I are also dressed identically, so it's us and like Steve Jobs for that matter. So us answering like the AI questions.
Or Mr. Smith from Matrix.
Yeah, so it's a good choice for us to answer this question. Maybe I will approach this question from the writer's side, because I'm not so well equipped to answer, say, the larger business side of it. But I think it's a good time for writers to start, and journalists to start thinking about why we write in the first place. Is it so that at the end of the day we have a byline to our name, or we've got a bunch of paragraphs and a bunch of words and a bunch of papers that we can say we wrote? Or is it because we definitely genuinely undergo some kind of actual benefit with the act of writing? And I will say most people who gravitate towards writing don't do it for the byline, and not just for the byline, but because genuinely the act of writing gives you something. And that's maybe you figure yourself out. It helps you put your opinions out. It helps you talk to people who are thinking about the same issues as you, but in a myriad of different ways. So it's AI will not be able to give you that experience of you having written something and whatever payback you get from that. So I think just in general, it's a good time for writers themselves to get clarity on what they feel about AI. There's a lot of noise out there about, oh, we're going to lose our jobs and there's going to be, less money in this space, and all of that is very, very well founded, and it's a good discussion to have. But personal clarity, I think, is important. Two, as Prasanita said before, I think it's a good time for writers to figure out their niche, and even more so figure out their voice and develop a certain kind of writing practice for themselves where people can look at a bunch of paragraphs and be like, oh, this sounds like Ria wrote it, because AI is not able to replicate that today, and you will still retain something extra, a USP, some kind of power over what technology can produce. I'm going to say on a personal level, I don't like AI. I'm not even getting into whether I use it or not. I don't like it, in a sense that I don't think technology has ever really given us the full benefit of what it has promised to give us without giving us a bunch of different harms along the way as well. So I think I hold skepticism, but I do see writers around me use it very heavily, especially during their research processes. Of course, you have to do fact checking, etc., all of that, but it's become a co-worker of sorts for a lot of people. And I mean, as long as you fact check whatever you get out of it, I don't personally also see an ethical problem. It's like a well-equipped search engine for a lot of people. So I think that's a good position to be using AI in. If we eliminate the fact-checking process, there's of course a lot of problems because AI isn't factually accurate entirely. We've already seen reports of some publications, websites, etc., like BuzzFeed, beginning to use AI-generated content. So I will say that there's going to be a point of time where you know how today we have these distinctions between, oh, this is an independent publication and this isn't an independent publication, or this is like a print publication and this is not a print publication. And there's those hierarchies that mean different things to different people. I think we're going to reach a point where there's going to be this publication uses AI and this one doesn't. And then it becomes your choice to associate whatever values or ethics you want to associate with the two of them as a writer and figure out where you want to work. So these are all, I think, dilemmas that are gonna hit the realm of writership and journalism pretty soon. That's where I'm at, because that's the realm that I operate in. I'd love to hear from Jamal, I think, about the other side of it as well. So looking forward to his answer.
Yeah, I don't think of AI as a threat at all. I know it's a very commonly believed perception. People are going to be out of jobs, etc. I think of it as an opportunity. And it takes me back to, about 15 years ago, I was the editor of Men's Health when a new staffer who joined me from Bangalore, Techie City and all, came to me and said, this one spells his name, someone we were featuring, like this. I checked it on Wikipedia, right? And I looked it up, and I didn't know what Wikipedia was then, right? And I looked it up and I said, okay, this is crowdsourced. Is it reliable? Is it not? There was no social media then. There was no Instagram, definitely. There was Twitter at that time, where you could go and check how a person spelled his name if they were on Twitter, and much fewer people were on Twitter, right? Today, a decade and a half later, I mean, would you think Wikipedia is reliable? It has all wrong information about me. It gives me some awards that I have never won, which I'm very appreciative of, and I don't want to write back to them, correcting them at all, right? So, it's technology. It's a tool, right? And it will, while we will have, credibility built in ways where it'll probably be able to credit sources, etc., etc. Will it ever be able to have the emotion that a human being brings to the table? When you're talking about AI writing poetry, yes, of course AI can write poetry, but is it going to be able to mirror feelings that poetry is meant to evoke, right? I don't think so. I think one of the things that I also, in the previous question, our audiences today, why they trusted Dhruv Rathi and a Mohak Mangal, etc., because they've evolved. Today, they will watch a Times Now, but not Time, Republic for maybe entertainment, or maybe because they align to that point of view, but they know biases, right? And when they when they will watch one TV channel, when they'll watch a Fox News, they'll also watch a CNN, right? And then they'll come to their own point of view. Similarly, with AI, audiences will evolve. We will know we'll begin to recognize what AI has generated. We will be able to recognize and see through human emotion. And I think that is the future. I think we're just making a mountain out of a molehill. It's a positive tool that's in our hands. Ria, don't say I don't like AI at all. It's a tool. Use it. I mean, predictive text, I hated. I hated SMSs when they started, right? There were 160 characters at that time. They were cumbersome to type. But today, I don't like people calling me. I prefer a message before. I message people. I messaged my mother this morning. Mom, are you awake? Can you talk? Right? So, and I like it like that. And I like it when people approach me like that. So, I mean, we have to evolve with it. It's an opportunity. And Ria, you and I both dress similarly because we're both the Gen Z-minded people on this group.
Chetan, can I take just a minute
Please,
here?
Satish, yes, I'd love to get your take on this.
Yeah, just just a little point. So as of now in the magazine, we don't allow anybody to use AI, any of the reporters or the columnists. In fact, we have a AI check. We have the software which will check, and if it says this has been like written by AI, then we call the person and ask how much is it, what did you do, was it for research, etc. But actually Jamal is right. It's like a tool, and I would really actually say that actually both Dia and Jamal are right. I think that it's a tool, as Jamal said. It'll be like, I'll give you an example. For instance, the many states are now thinking of implementing the Uniform Civil Code. Okay, now if you wanted to know what the law is, what does it entail? You go to an AI written article. I mean, it'll tell you everything about whoever has said whatever about UCC. Now, if you want to know what it is going to do to the society, what is a political part of it, there you need a journalist. There you need somebody, a human being with a mind, who can think what this is for. I mean, who can find out what is the political message, what is the social message, how is it going to change, lives of people. That you can't. I don't think you can leave it to AI, because it depends on the question you ask. It'll give you both answers.
Right.
Here so that's my thing. So if you want just facts and okay, maybe it's like a little bit more refined than Wikipedia. It can give you, but if you want to know what it is going to do to people, I really think you need some human mind, to fathom that.
Interesting. So you're saying things like analysis and synthesis and figuring out where things will go in the future is where the human aspect will come in, which AI probably won't be able to do for you because it's too complex also. Yeah.
Which is, to be fair, if you listen to this conversation a year later, it may all seem very silly because we may all be completely into AI because it's moving so fast. But this is where we stand as of now.
Yeah, we'll all have a chip in our head with Elon written on it.
I just wanted to add something to Mr. Padmanabhan's point. He is absolutely right.
Yes, Satish is good.
Because the point is that why a reporter is important in today's time is because yes, they're not only going to go and find that information, but they're also going to fact check it before they put it into something, because now we have so many checks and balances in most editorial newsrooms in place if we write using AI or if we write using anything. So anyway, we had a very strict plagiarism tool in the first place. If reporters were, not able to report or find information, like Jamal said, we always had Wikipedia, right? But we cannot rely on that information because some random person sitting somewhere is just writing it, right?
Yeah.
They are not verifying that information. Reporters go, and if they hear something, they at least verify it from not one, but at least two sources. And if it's a better organization or whatever the standard might be, 3 sources, right? So then it's not a rumor, then it's a proper information. And then AI is never going to be able to do that, at least not in the next 10 years for sure.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. Great points. All right. The AI box is one that will suck us in, and we'll be talking about AI for the rest of the session. But I want to also talk about a couple of other things.
Hand, I think.
Sorry, who has?
I think Urvashi is raising her hand.
Yeah, Urvashi, go ahead. You're on mute though. You're on mute, Urvashi.
Yeah, this is a larger point about AI and journalism. And so the thing is that if you look at a lot of how current job roles are advertised on LinkedIn or some of the other spaces, a requirement is that journalists should be adept with the use of AI and understanding how AI works, especially in things like investigative journalism. And so that, I think, where tech is now kind of taking over writing, which is a little worrisome to me, because I see like a lot of people who are very proficient at tech are now also writers, and they use AI to their advantage. So it's maybe that old school, fear that, oh, tech will now overpower us, and that as a journalist, I mean, I've been in this field for 15 years, and I continuously feel like I have to update, I have to enroll in a data journalism boot camp or something, or learn AI, because otherwise, how am I going to be relevant in this, current job market? But then I also think about the way I consume news and I consume text is just like good old fashioned writing is what I consume, and which actually a lot of, we just want like good text. And well, I mean, we can distinguish between, let's just say, like a Truman Capote and like some AI generated, like, rubbish. Sorry
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
rubbish.
In fact,
But
my next question was for you, Urvashi, and
yeah.
you're sort of answering the question, which was, has ground reporting changed since journalism went to digital? So you're sort of answering that already, but keep going.
Yeah. So now the thing is that I want to like talk about logistics and funding, and how reporting is like, when again, I'm talking from an entirely freelancer perspective. Like when you go and pitch a story to say XYZ publication, and they say, okay, hey, great story, we want this, okay, and they'll assign you like a certain budget, but then a lot of the expenses are, you have to pay it out of pocket, okay,
right?
Or some of them will just say, can you like make a few phone calls and then just get it done. So it's getting increasingly hard to go to the field. But what I've seen, some journalists are doing very intelligently also, and that we can also take a leaf out of their books, is to tie up with grant making organizations like Pulitzer Center, IWMF, the Earth Journalism Network, all of these grant making organizations, which you can tie up with, and who will like give you the funding to do what you need to do comfortably, ensure you get a remuneration on the side also, and you have your publication which doesn't feel the pressure to pay you commensurately. Because if I'm doing like a long form story that is taking me 6 months and you're paying me like 20 grand, that doesn't cut it. I need to
obviously not.
be paid much more, so but then that means the burden on the journalist is twofold: find a publisher and find a organization that gives the grant.
That's a lot of work. I mean, what you want to be doing is journalism, not fundraising.
But some people are doing it, and unless you're just happy with what the organizer is saying, okay, 7,000 rupees for this long form story, and take it or leave it. So it's become complicated, and also it's harder to interact on the ground. Like I think Jamal raised that point about trust. People like, oh, you're a journalist, okay, fine, just like walk the other way. I don't want to really talk or interact, and then you have to. And that's the time that I think I will like tell reporters to do, like spend time on the field. Like don't parachute in and like go out. You have to build trust with the communities you're reporting on, the people you owe it to them really. It's not like, okay, tell me like what happened to you, tell me about how do you feel, what was your trauma. No, you have to sink yourself in there, be there for a few days, build relationships, get the person to open up and be interested in their larger life rather than just that specific, invest in them. And I think, and they turn out to be your best sources, and even friends for life. So I think it's hard, it's increasingly hard work, and you have to be, I don't know, passionate about it to be in this line of work.
Sure. Riddhi, I saw you nodding, and I wanted to ask you also the same question. What's your experience been on the fieldwork side of things, research?
Yeah, I mean, I think Urvashi really covered a lot of it. I mainly do like when I do journalism or reporting. So I do climate stuff. I do like labor and class is something that I feel class, caste, gender, whatever are all of these things that come into every story more or less if you're on the field. And that's a lens that you look at things from, right? Like how are different people being impacted based on these. So, like Urvashi said, feel like there's no substitute for being on the field, there's no substitute for putting in that time, there's no substitute for building trust, and I think more just like hanging around to pick up the little details that will like illuminate some aspect of the story for you. So I'll give a very concrete example. Like earlier this year I published a story with Atmos magazine, and it was on Auroville, and in context of this controversy that's been brewing over the current administration for the last few years about how it should be governed. But the larger question there was, what is the idea of utopia? You know, and how does utopia look in practice? And these competing definitions of utopia, when the government is kind of bringing in these accusations of neocolonialism and throwing these certain things around, but like really having the space to dig into it. And I could dig into it because this was a digital publication that I was writing for. And so I had like a good 4,500 words. So it was a long form story. I mainly do long form. But the reason I could do that is because they gave me a very generous travel budget. I was able to stay there for like 3 weeks. And before I went in, I didn't want to parachute. So I spent months reading books, talking to people on ground, laying the ground, and just doing many, many interviews before I even went in. So honestly, like, yeah, it's a luxury. Like there's an increasing kind of gigification of journalism. You know, it's much better when you have a team with you, when you have you know, you're getting that salary every month. Otherwise the burden of finding the grant, then finding the publication, like it's a lot. And honestly, like I personally, so I kind of straddle like writing and journalism in the sense that I do a lot of non-fiction, fiction, and then so it's more like literary narrative journalism, I guess. Like that's kind of my wheelhouse, or what I prefer to do. But I found that it's very, like, I personally got very tired of hustling and pitching. And now that I've been in this for a few years, I'm lucky enough, touch wood, that in the last few years, I've mostly not pitched anything. All my work has been commissioned. So editors know my byline. They specifically seek me out. They come to me, and I've gotten a lot of interesting assignments from people I did not know at all. So this Atmos piece, for instance, like I had no connection with them. And they just reached out to me, and it was one of the most fulfilling stories I've done. But also, I think a big part of this is building, like as a freelancer, your network.
Right.
Other freelancers, with other journalists. Like I didn't go to journalists, I didn't go to like ACJ or anything like that. So I didn't have inbuilt network. I have not really, like I worked with Khabar Lahariya for a while, but that's again a non-traditional newsroom, you know, they're doing something else. So I didn't have that newsroom thing. So I've built up, I think, over time, using the internet, using like social media, just these like very authentic relationships with other journalists where you read each other's work, where you follow people who you respect, and then you connect them to opportunities. So yeah, like in that sense, I think networks are very important, building and cultivating your byline. And then there's really no substitute for having the resources to be on the field. Because otherwise, I think it goes hand in hand with AI, right? Like you have a lot of like with digital media, and like there's a lot of innovation that's possible, like multimedia formats and things like that. Like, but also there's a lot of like shallow stunt parachuted in, or like you call 3 people, get 2 pull quotes, go with the trends, whatever. So I mean, that's really not the kind of thing I'm interested in.
Sure, sure. But I must say, this is for all the people who are here. I know most of the panelists are all, you know, very well accomplished authors or writers, and they've already, you know, won awards and been there and done that, and that's why they're on the panel. But for a lot of the people who are starting out, I think going at it seriously and trying to, you know, build your profile, like Riddhi is saying, you have to start where you are and build with what you've got, and then build it from there so that you can get to the point. You can hope to get to the point where then the work starts to follow you instead of you having to follow the work. But I guess that's a longer journey. And I think it also comes to some extent from specialization, Riddhi, because I know you write about very specific things. And so when somebody wants someone who writes, who's covering those 2 or 3 particular things, I know you write about climate, I know you write about the whole LGBTQ side of things. You, like you said, you write a lot about class and labor. So those are the areas where then people might want to specifically come to you. And of course, for you, those of you who don't know, Riddhi was also shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize. So those things will help make your profile more impressive. But I want to come to the next question, which is the next question, or actually it has predates AI, which is what's happening to print. Uh, and of course, there is the whole, again, doomsday scenario, and then there are the people who say, people said radio would die, but radio is just morphed into something you listen to in the car. But it hasn't gone away, and it's just changed form, but it still continues to exist and continues to be relevant. So what do you think is going to happen to the print medium? Clearly it has shrunk and it has changed in some ways. And I'd love to have Prasannata and Satish talk about this, saying where do you think print is going to be, say 5 years from now? And if it's changing, then what's the new form of it going to be? Is it just going to be similar? Is it going to be something drastically different? Or what are you seeing happening with print media at this point in time?
Shall I go?
Please.
Just now I was hearing Urvashi. She said, she's been in this line for 15 years, as if it was a lifetime. I've been there double that time, and I was just thinking. I started with Sunday magazine, and when I was 24, and that's when I heard that magazines are going to die and print is gone. This is the last of, well, in case of Sunday, it didn't turn out to be true. But print does, it's still there. It's been about nearly 27 years. Chetan, I think when you say print versus digital, if you don't, if you don't mean the reels and the audio notes, etc. If you actually see, digital is print in the sense that you sit down and write. Right, it's one is on a paper, the other is on a screen. So a print to when you actually say print versus digital, it means that a magazine or a newspaper or a website, what kind of what kind of a voice does it have? It's not really many of the pure digital news portals, many of them actually are really sort of a PTI on screen. It's really, but they don't have any voice. In the sense that, okay, you get the news, an accident has happened in somewhere in Telangana, a flood has happened in Orissa, or, somebody has murdered somebody in Pune. So you get that, those notifications are coming to you. There are, as Jamal said, there are digital writers who are writing 10 stories a day. What 10 stories in a day can you write with any voice, with any mind to it? With any take on it, so what I'm saying is, so that sense, it's not really in some ways print versus digital. It's a kind of news versus another kind. It's one kind
deep
of
versus shallow. Was that another way to?
No. I wouldn't say that. It's one, it's information versus, say, knowledge, or it's you also. Many people also want to know if there has been an earthquake. If the weather is going to be good to a place that you're going to. So you need those. You need that. But on the other hand, if you're traveling and if you want to know the culture and the politics of that place, what has been the history, or what are the sort of burning issues, or the those that can only happen when a website or a newspaper or a magazine has a certain voice. So as Riddhi says that if she's known to write about class conflict and the underprivileged, etc. So you would want to, you would go to a website which we also sort of we are very, very keen on. You would go to Outlook to look for those. But if you want to know what the weather is, if there has been if there's a traffic jam on the road, or if which are also very important. It's not shallow; it's important information. But it's a kind of information that that's what I'm saying. So it's both. They have to be there. So digital, mostly, what I feel these days is really the fourth and the fifth and the sixth pages of a newspaper. The city page, the international page, where there's tidbit news. So and so has, you keep getting these notifications, but the editorial, the front page, is where the voice of the publication is, right?
Right.
Where you stand for certain things, where what is it? So that distinction between really print and digital is this, there is none. It is the same.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. That's a very interesting
No,
perspective. Prasannata, what do you think?
Yeah, so I would like to add to Mr. Padmanabhan's point that I think the phenomena that we keep referring to is print dead or is digital the next. I feel, and what I've understood also, it's a very English news medium relevant. If you see in non-English spaces, be it Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, uh, those readers still read their newspaper only. They have the digital, like for example, Dainik Bhaskar has an app, right? And I have the app also, but I would prefer reading the newspaper because what Mr. Padmanabhan said, that a lot of the times the news on the digital is very short. You don't get enough context, and they do put long form stories as well. Not because most publications do, be it EP, be it Mint, be it any publication, they have long stories and in-depth stories on the website as well. That is more like to hook the viewers, right? So sorry, the readers, right? So that if there is a new kind of a reader, then you are sampling the website, let's say, by reading these small stories, but then you scroll through and you find some interesting long form piece, and that's what you start reading, and that's how you build a readership on a website as well, right? So print is not something which can die just for the benefit of that people are so ingrained to read a newspaper in the first place and a print thing in the first place. And let's just, if we are just considering the Gen Z or the next generation that is not on the physical medium, then that's why the website needs to be built side by side, so that the website is doing the branding as well on the digital space, and also it is pulling in some readers, and then you keep the readers involved by adding up more interesting stories so that they stick around. So it's not the problem is that why print seems like it is dying, because it is making less money, but that again is a very English news phenomena, because English readers have a lot of options. But when you come to a regional reader, or when you come to like a Gujarati reader, they have very less option when it comes to literature in the first place, right? Like how many Gujarati books do you have? How many Marathi books do you have? So they read newspapers, right? They're very used to it. Yeah. So that's what even the data shows. It's not my theory. This is what even the data shows. If you see the Dainik Bhaskar's revenue versus if you see a Hindustan Times' revenue, but you see in Hindustan Times only, if you see Hindustan Times' revenue versus their Hindi paper, which is the Hindustan, their revenues very starkly different. So because the website doesn't attract so much of that readership of a regional reader. It's just India is different, right? It's different everywhere. So these are mediums that needs to be built. And the problem is that advertising was being limited to newspapers now, but now things have stabilized. So all your legacy brands and your publications like, your luxury brands and, your political parties, they go to newspaper only to advertise, right? Because they know that's where their voting audience is, or they know that, okay, this is like a Hindustan Unilever with, or Unilever, whatever, it reaches like a Saradgaon or something in Maharashtra, right? Their products reach there. So they have to advertise in newspapers to be there, right? And that's how it works. I feel this newspaper dying is a real problem. And I'm not saying that it's not dying in regional languages also, but the thing is that the rate is going to be slow, because over there the need is there. In English, the need is not there so much. So that is why it seems like print is dying.
Interesting. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So we have overshot our time, but that's to be expected, and we kept a buffer. But so we have 3 minutes left. But I'd like, and I'm going to open this out. But what do you? Is there one thing that you? Yes.
I'm so sorry. Jamal was raising his hand. I think he'd also like to
Yeah,
add.
Jamal, you want to add something, please?
Just a very small point.
Sure.
It's a Sunday morning. It's not noon yet, and every Sunday morning I get an alert from my phone saying you've spent 9 hours or 12 hours every day on your screen, right? And as we go along, we're going to keep wanting to reduce that screen time, because whether it's the phone or the laptop or the television, right? And we're going to want print, right? So print is just a medium. It's something it'll never die. It probably will reduce in consumption because there are more options. Just that limited point.
Sure. Urvashi, you also want to add something? You had your hand up. You're on mute again. Sorry.
Yeah, just like a quick point about adaptability, especially for people who are just starting out. So I was in a newsroom recently, like with a big newspaper where I was editing, but I was also doing Instagram explainers. So, and it's literally like in the crispest possible text, like 3 lines, explain what was the insurgency in Myanmar, in Manipur about, for example, right? Very difficult, but you had to be like literally in 3 or 4 slides, like what was it, right? Those short explainers, just for bite-sized information. So as writers, uh, who might take some time to establish themselves, we need to kind of be doing a little bit of that, like learn how to write shortly, crisply, and visually. Visual storytelling is all about, is really the way forward. That's and also learning how to write like scripts for podcasts, and just short blog posts, and also long form writing. So it's about diversifying your voice as well. Like how many voices can you actually take on as a writer, and writing is so much about hustling these days. Yeah.
That's a great point. And I'm going to open this up to everyone, but I just want to add one thing. If somebody like you were writing the Instagram explainer, I'd be happy to look at it. But if it was a fresh kid out of college who write an Instagram explainer, they would lose so much nuance and they would get so many things wrong. And that's, I think, what we are afraid of, is because that's the piece that's the scary thing out there. And that's what AI would do for them. Then that kid would go to AI and get AI to write the script for the explainer, and it would be off on multiple levels. But anyway, so thank you for that, Urvashi. That was a great tip. All the other folks, what would you say to our group, before they go, and on one thing or something to keep in mind for 2025, or going forward into the future? What would you recommend? I think what Urvashi has said is awesome. But any other suggestions, ideas, points? Yeah, go for it, Satish.
No, I mean, I just the small point which I think Riddhi, I think, had made earlier. That, I mean, in the end, as a journalist, there is not going to be any substitute, for the journalist to go to a place where, where you're reporting from, talk to people, get to know them. I keep telling, and I've also taken a few journalism classes. I keep telling the students, look for deep interviews. It's not the numbers. It's not that you come back to the newsroom, with 20 quotes. You speak to, I mean, of course, to get that one person to tell you the story, you need to meet 20, 25 people. But, just spend few days, find out what their lives are like, what are the problems. I'm saying even for general political reporting, there are these 10 schemes. Go to a village, go to a person's home, stay 3-4 days, ask the wife, the lady, if she's getting the scheme aimed at her, aimed for her, if it's meant for her. Has she, there is not going to be, whether there's AI or any tech comes, whatever it may be, it's for a journalist to go to the ground, speak to the people, and write it, think about it, sort of really assimilate what you've learned and tell it to your audience in a way that's lucid. I don't think that's, it hasn't changed for about, I think, 3,000 years, and it's not going to change.
All right, great. Thanks for that, Satish. Riddhi, you were about to say something.
Yeah. To add 3 things, I guess. One, I've already said, sort of And again, this is just very basic, long-standing kind of what you do as a writer and or a journalist. I would say one is cultivate your niche, cultivate your research interest, build your own expertise. Like the easiest way to have a good byline, to have a byline you enjoy working on that other people look for and read, is to be someone who knows what they're talking about and who will look at certain angles, who will really go deep. So I really think there's no substitute for that. So cultivate your research interest, your expertise, keep an eye out and follow things you find interesting. And like, I think for me, it's always the deep, more time, more thought out things versus like quick hot takes. Like there's an industry for that, and like op-eds are great, but like that's not what I'm interested in. So for people who are interested in doing more like what I do, long form kind of pieces, or even just building a body of work over a period of time, cultivate your research interests. Like, so like if you're interested in cities or urban planning, for instance, I would also say read the literature around it. So for instance, I'm really interested in cities, so I read a lot about Delhi. I read like say Amitabh Bhaviskar's Uncivil City. I read Properties of Rent that has come out last year. So like keep in touch with the literature, know what you're talking about, you know. So then when you come to anything or you pitch something, for instance, you are bringing something that maybe the editor doesn't know. You know, you can add that. The other thing is, I would say very basic, read. Like build your own writing craft, read people you admire, follow those journalists. And the third is very practical. I would say if you are starting out, find the people you admire, find the places they write for, find the grants that are there in their like acknowledgements or whatever, and then apply to the same things. Essentially, like I said, I didn't go to J school. I built my writing career kind of haphazardly out of scratch, and this is what I did. I just kind of taught myself. I followed journalists, and I just try to do the things that they had done and apply. Don't be scared of rejection. Yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Anyone else? Anything you want to add?
Unpopular advice?
Sure.
That everyone's just going to be up in arms against me. Advice to writers in 2025: use AI to write your story, and then write your story and make sure yours is better than what AI has produced.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I agree with you, actually. All right.
I want to re-up something. Yeah, I want to just re-emphasize something that Riddhi had said before, which is that networks and building personal relationships with the editors and other writers around you is something that is so important, especially insofar as now that the market's a little, I wouldn't say saturated, but there's so many people. You don't know who you want to work with. Sometimes you don't know if you'll be able to get to the person you want to work with sometimes. So if you worked with an editor and had a really good experience, I think staying in touch with that person really, really helps. If I used to do this when I started out, had I just finished a story and really liked the editor who worked on it, I would immediately pitch them something else in that same email thread itself. I think just keeping that working relationship alive, just replying to their stories, doing all of that is so important to stay on top of mind for them as well. Another thing I'll say, and this can also be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, is that use social media to promote your work. I just see a lot of journalists who do incredibly good work and just somehow never end up pushing it themselves. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a creator or everyone needs to create content specifically for social media, but if you've done good work already, at least do it the justice of making sure it finds its audience and supporting each other. I think builds this network of support where people will also push your work, and sometimes you never know what tweet or what Instagram post you put out could reach like your dream publication, and they could reach out to you and want you to work with them. So if you've put in so much effort on making something good, I think it's also your duty to make sure it reaches where it's supposed to reach. Though if there are people as an add-on who have the bandwidth and the ability to build an audience on social media for themselves, I will say it's also a good time to bet heavily on platforms and sort of create an identity for yourself as like a writer, and keep putting your opinions, thoughts, etc. online. It helps you stay on top of discourse. It helps people remember you by the things that you tweet about. This is a little bit of a iffy advice, because I mean, a lot of people prefer to concentrate on their writing work itself. But if you have the bandwidth and the ability to become a bit of a personality online, I will say that definitely helps with work. That definitely helps command more pay. And at a time where the amount that you're getting paid is slowly lessening. And like sometimes if you over time where money in journalism is hard to come by, you can use these tools to your advantage a little bit as well.
Sure, great. Thanks so much for that, Riya. I'm going to take up your advice and mention here, I lead a course on blog and article writing that starts next Sunday. So since Riya said we should promote ourselves, I thought I should do it right here. You can check that out online. We'll probably share a link with you. But did the other panelists also want to add something? As we are closing, we're already over time. But any one or two pieces of advice for the people who are out here, maybe aspiring journalists, or maybe just want to do some freelance work? Any suggestions? Yep, go for it, Urvashi.
Just wanted to agree with something that Ridhi said. Like for people, just starting out, I think the first 3-4 years should be just about finding out what interests you. I remember when I was at my first job in the Hindu, I wanted to do conflict reporting. And so my bosses told me, first cover the city and then do conflict reporting. Learn about your immediate environment first and then, go on to like conflict stuff. And I mean, you can think about it in many ways. So when you're young, you want to like explore a little bit to find out what you're really good at and what you could be doing. And then once you've identified it, just be obsessed with it. Like, make it your thing. And, you should be the expert on it. Or expert is again like a problematic phase, but, you should be you should define your voice in it. And, you should be one of the go-to people to, that people will want to commission for work. But saying that, this pressure on writers to write as well as promote themselves is something that can cause a lot of people a lot of stress. I know some brilliant people who do not even have LinkedIn profiles and websites, and they've done some amazing work because it's toxic at a certain level to continuously I mean, I completely recognize the need, but
Sure.
It feels it can get very difficult, at times. And it seems if you don't have social media, you don't exist, and which is terrible for people who just want to write and don't really want to think about publicity and stuff like that. But this is 2025, and there's no escaping self-promotion. Yeah, that's my two cents.
All right. So thank you all. We are at 12:10. We promise people will finish at 12 noon. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation.